Chapter 2, A Piece of Home. I pulled on my boots and stood, stretching the kinks out of my back. 3 days later, and I was so ready to be out of the infirmary. Though following behind that readiness was an equally powerful reluctance to leave. I'd spent the last few days oscillating between boredom and amused irritation at the constant poking, prodding, and questioning. The only thing that made it bearable was getting to know the staff. The nurses, orderlies, and even Dr. Sasaki. Really? He was, admittedly, odd. But he was also sort of a funny person. He had a very deep fascination with Espers. In a way, it reminded me of Trent a little. Oh no. Girl, don't be distracted, you're as bad as me. Even of how I could be with certain topics. It had been off-putting at first, but I'd grown accustomed to it quickly. And outside the medical ward was an entire facility of people I didn't know. The few I did know, I hadn't seen much. Dr. Sasaki had banned visitors, lest someone abscond with me again. Okay, alright, here are some points with me for using abscond. I love that word. Apparently, he held grudges. Hello, Dr. Sasaki. I shot him another sidelong glance as he stood next to the bed, looking at a digital display in his hands. Everyone kept cheerily informing me I still had some residual effects of psi fatigue and shouldn't overdo it yet. In spite of the dire warnings, I felt fine now.
Blood pressure stable, heart rate is good, synaptic activity continues to stabilize. Your thorax system appears to be reaching homeostasis after the extreme stimulation of the last few weeks.
Uh-huh. Tell me more. The thorax system is the system that controls psionic ability. It is located in the brain and, like many body systems, is still being studied and researched. Some aspects of how psi works are well understood, while others are still quite mysterious, like many other structures in the brain. The thorax systems of N-class Espers and all non-Espers with limited psi ability have nuclei clusters called occultatum that can be found throughout every part of the brain. They generate psi waves and are what control psi. The only people on Arcalis who do not possess a thorax system are those who are afflicted with nanite rejection. Some of these people possess partially developed thorax systems, or people who have never been exposed to nanites in high concentrations, such as the nomos, since there is a much lower nanite saturation in the wastes. Without a thorax system, you cannot generate psi. Interesting. Okay, so the thorax system's in the brain, right? Located in the brain, and it controls psionic ability. And some people have nanite rejection because they don't have a thorax system. I wonder why that is. Different N-class Espers have slightly different configurations of the occultatum, and in N-class Espers, the nanites in the brain are integral to the process of these nuclei clusters regulating psi energy. Though an N-class Esper can still use psi to some degree if their nanosystem is completely deactivated, it has a debilitating effect on their thorax system most of the time. F-class Espers have distinct differences in their thorax system, which makes them more difficult to detect. Their nuclei clusters are located in different places and have different configurations that aren't consistent from Esper to Esper. They also possess a unique type of cluster called corimbus latens that N-class do not possess. Their nanites do not play a role in their generation and regulation of psi, so even people who have never been exposed to nanites can develop these type of nuclei clusters and develop at F-class psi. Really? How interesting. He looked up at me as he spoke. Sorry, I blanked out there for a second, Dr. Sasaki. I was thinking about thorax systems.
I expect all functions to return to normal within the next 10 days. We'll continue to observe you for the next month to be safe, so you'll be required to come for weekly check-ins. Now that your bio-expansion is complete, we may see full recovery sooner than expected.
That's good to know.
I believe your mental state will continue to improve as well, though I remain convinced relocating you to a more comfortable environment will speed this up.
Dr. Sasaki suddenly leaned in very close.
That said, I admit I still feel somewhat offended you find my infirmary disagreeable.
I put up a hand to fend him off, already used to him doing this sort of thing. The fact that you insist on invading my personal space without warning is one of the reasons I'm uncomfortable here.
Pupils are slightly dilated, a small spike in heart rate.
Oh, shut up. You know nothing, Dr. Sasaki.
Do I make you uncomfortable, Morgan?
Well, I hedged. Somehow I didn't think insulting the man in charge of my medical care was a good idea. And he didn't always make me uncomfortable, just when he forgot that personal space was a thing.
Difficulty maintaining eye contact is sometimes a sign of deception.
I snapped my gaze right back to him, noting he had that insufferable little smile again.
That would mean I do make you uncomfortable.
Will you please stop doing that?
Doing what?
Analyzing everything I do. It's incredibly disconcerting. Not everything is a medical condition.
On the contrary.
He started making notes on the display again, though I had no idea what could possibly be interesting enough for him to write down.
We exist as physical beings. There's not a single thing we see, taste, touch, hear, smell, or do that isn't driven by our physiology. Whether it's an illness or an emotion, everything is, indeed, a medical condition.
If you say so.
And as your physician, it's my job to analyze your medical condition.
Even as he said that, he did back out of my personal space, though.
I'm certain you're aware of this, but though you're being released from the infirmary for now, we'll need to run some tests on your abilities in the future. It's necessary to test your capabilities in a controlled environment and record your Psi fingerprint.
Psi fingerprint?
Every Esper has a unique waveform. As a queen, you can mimic others, but your Psi still possesses its own waveform. We keep a record of every Esper in Endgame. That now includes you. But for the time being, Morgan, focus on your recovery. I'm looking forward to an interesting display once you're fully mended.
He smiled again and strode out of the room. I groaned softly, dragging a hand through my hair. Sometimes I got this feeling of being little more than a new toy for them to study and show off, though I knew that wasn't a fair assessment. Not for any of them. And not for Dr. Sasaki either. I didn't think he was a bad person. Actually, he'd never been anything but kind to me. He did seem to care about his patients a great deal. There came a soft tap at the door. Come in. Hey, it's my boy. I wasn't terribly surprised to see Ari was the one who had come to pick me up, but he wasn't alone this time. The woman with him was one I'd met that night in the alley. I hadn't seen her at all since my arrival. I'm glad you showed up again. I wasn't sure I even remembered her name. She peeked around the door frame and grinned at me as Ari stepped inside.
You're looking a lot better than I remember.
I'm feeling much better than I was then, too.
I hope you don't mind Vanessa coming with me. She insisted.
Of course I don't mind. I couldn't hide away and avoid meeting people forever.
I told you it would be fine.
Aw, Ari's like, I don't know, man. You know, she's overwhelmed and stuff. Maybe it's not a good idea. Aw, what a sweetie.
And don't let this kid mislead you.
She slapped Ari's arm with the back of her hand as she passed him on her way to me. He's like, ugh.
I'm not Vanessa. I'm Vaughn. He knows I prefer it. He just likes to be a brat.
Ah, it's nice to meet you. Kid? Brat? Ari didn't look to be that much younger than her, if at all.
So do you remember me?
I did, but interestingly enough, I didn't remember the artificial arm. Maybe I'd been too distracted to notice it before. Part of her right hand was artificial as well. I wonder how that happened. I remember you somewhat. There are still bits and pieces of that day that are pretty fuzzy. Now that I think about it, didn't Ari say you're a bishop?
Correct! One of the best. If you're ready to go, Morgan, there is no reason we can't discuss this on the way to your new apartment. After all, we did come here to escort you there. Don't make it sound so dire. We're not escorting her like she's a criminal.
She grinned at me as we walked to the door together. A little overwhelmed, I simply walked alongside her without saying anything. I mean, she's pretty friendly so far, at least.
We're just going to show you where you'll be staying. It's not like we're some kind of armed escort.
I guess that's good to know.
You guess? Girl, if you have to start having to have an armed escort to just walk down the hall, it's time to be worried.
As we walked, there were a few residual butterflies trying to start up, but Vanessa gave my arm a very gentle squeeze. When I looked at her, she smiled softly.
No need to be so nervous, you know?
I'm not nervous. She just laughed at that.
Yeah, sure. We're not psychics or anything, so that wobbly attempt at reassurance is definitely convincing.
Well, she had a point there. I couldn't exactly fool an organization of Espers, could I? Sorry.
Have you always been this timid? That is definitely not the impression I got from Ari and Caleb's report.
Ha ha ha, yeah. I'm not trying to be timid. As we passed the lounge Ari and I had gone to a few days ago, I realized that spot marked the end of what I'd seen at this place. Everything beyond this point was new.
I can understand how you feel a little. Whether you liked being stuck in that room or not, the infirmary probably felt safe. I imagine stepping out here feels like...
enemy territory?
Except we're not your enemy.
Inside the lift, Vanessa pressed one of the buttons on the control panel.
I'm sure it's difficult suddenly having to come to terms with things on a level that's a little more real. Probably like crossing the point of no return.
I swallowed hard. That definitely was a bit on the nose.
Vanessa, isn't that going too far?
Wait, was it? Sorry! I didn't mean anything by that! Was I right? It's alright. I mean, you are a bishop after all.
In spite of what she says, Vanessa isn't looking into your thoughts. Scanning the mind of a conscious individual and pulling out useful information is quite challenging.
Is it?
You'd be surprised. People's minds are just a cacophony of jumbled thoughts that fly past at unimaginable speeds and vanish in an instant. Picking out a single thread of them and making sense of it isn't something you can usually do if someone is awake and, you know, not drugged. Plus, it's pretty dangerous for both parties.
But there are Espers with telepathy.
It's not what you're imagining, probably. It's more detecting intent, feelings, images, or ideas. It's nothing like having normal conversation or eavesdropping on what someone is thinking. And don't worry, Ari's right. I'm not peeking into your head or anything.
Okay, so you're not a mark. Good to know.
Despite how she looks, Vanessa is simply rather talented at reading people. Hey! What the hell does that mean? Despite how she looks?
She grabbed Ari's cheek and gave it a very solid pinch. You know, that is warranted, I think, in the situation. He reached up an arm to fend her off. Ow!
Vanessa, please stop. And what's with all this Vanessa crap again lately? I told you to knock it off. Is this how you treat your superiors? You do not outrank me. I'm not talking about rank, buddy. Bishops are just legitimately superior to you scrawny knights.
I broke into laughter watching her corner him against the wall of the elevator cab and bully him. Amazing. His expression barely changed at all, but it was still rare for me to see him that animated. And somehow, just seeing something that looked like a semi-normal interaction was nice. Vanessa and Ari both froze as I laughed at them. And somehow their surprised expressions just made me laugh harder. Sorry. I'm sorry. Vanessa abandoned Ari and beamed at me.
You finally laughed.
Ari straightened his clothes and brushed his hair back into place as the door to the lift opened. My hair!
If you wanted to make her laugh, it wasn't necessary to go that far, Vanessa.
Vanessa tried to elbow him, but he slipped out into the hall before she could. She shot me a grin.
Like I said, he's definitely a brat.
Come on. She pulled me into the corridor and past multiple doors.
Vanessa, you don't have to drag her with you like that. She's still recovering.
Vaughn gave Ari a teasing grin over her shoulder. I love that our girl's already like, she's Vaughn, just from the beginning.
You're already being awfully protective of her, aren't you? As the Queen's Knight, that is my job.
Ooh, I like that. The Queen's Knight, eh?
Hey! I'm the Queen's Bishop. Your job isn't to protect her from me.
Queen's Knight? What does that mean?
He's talking about being a part of the First Guard. Since you're still new to all this, you're likely unaware. The highest ranked Espers in Endgame are placed in an elite group referred to as the Guard. The Guard is generally headed by a King and Queen ranked Esper, each of whom has a Knight, Rook, and Bishop assigned to them.
Interesting.
Though the King is currently considered the de facto commander of Endgame's Esper force, the Queen and her Guard lead and oversee many of the more important missions. Wow, look at Mr. Encyclopedia here! I think you miss your true calling, Sir Ariel.
Ari ignored her as she started teasing again. But the Queen position was empty, wasn't it? Dr. Sasaki said something about that.
Correct. Until you arrived, the entire Guard was headed by Magnus Ulrich, currently the only King rank in Endgame.
Interesting.
The Queen's Guard still tends to oversee the bigger missions, but the Queen position has been vacant for a long time.
So they were pulling me off the street and pushing me straight into one of the most prominent roles in Endgame just because of my rank? I mean, you can do things nobody else can do, girl. It's interesting, so no wonder they were like, we gotta get this girl quick. I wonder how long it's been since they've had a queen. Based on what they said, this elite team was usually made up of just 8 people. Maybe even less. What did a rank say about my actual ability to do this job? Do I have like a rival queen I have to go up against by any chance?
Come on, Morgan. There's no reason to think so deeply about any of that yet. You still haven't even fully recovered.
Vaughn pulled me a little faster down the corridor, gesturing at the doors.
As you can see, this is one of our residential wings. Agents live here with their families. Or alone if they don't have any family staying here with them.
Entire families stay here?
Sometimes. Parents and siblings of minors can live on the grounds if they have skills that enable them to work somewhere on the complex. Spouses and the like are allowed even if they work elsewhere.
That's kind of nice. What about families that can't work here?
A lot of them live in Brazil. But as you probably know, it's not easy to become a resident here.
Right. Brazil was pretty notorious for having very strict immigration policies. Getting a permit to live in the city was quite tough. Regardless, I hadn't really thought about families living here, though I guess it made sense.
Anyway, since you're here alone, we shuffle things around so you're pretty close to me and Ari.
Excellent. Oh? Just the 2 of you?
Is there someone else you'd prefer to live close to?
Since you said it that way, I assumed I was put close to the 2 of you because of the whole guard thing. And Ari said there's a knight, bishop, and a rook.
Indeed. Caleb is also nearby.
Goody. Caleb? Vanessa burst out laughing again.
Look at her face! Oh man, you really don't like that guy, do you?
In spite of the situation, in spite of feeling sort of down and a little scared, as I watched her wipe at her eyes and laugh, I found myself smiling in amusement.
Wow, I wish Caleb could see the look of absolute rapture you had when Ari said he's in your guard too. Vanessa.
She leaned against the wall, holding her torso as she tried to catch her breath.
Not a fan of our little Kale?
Kale? Well, he kidnapped me. And was kind of rude about it. She shot Ari a teasing grin.
And Ari wasn't?
He was surprisingly polite for a kidnapper. Ari managed to look mildly exasperated at our teasing.
We did give our word we'd take her straight to her quarters. Well, we certainly can't pause in the hallway to have a bit of a laugh. That would have us going against our word, wouldn't it? Anyway, don't worry about Kale, alright? He's a bigger brat than this one, but he's actually not a bad guy. You needn't act as if you're that much older than us, Vanessa. It's not about age! It's about experience! Experience!
How old are the two of you, anyway? Now that Ari brought it up, I was curious.
42, thank you very much.
And killing it. Okay, so this is about time again, so that's fine. So 1 Earth year is for every 1.5 years on Arcalis. Good to know.
36.
Huh. I expected him to be older. He looked young, but he just acted so stuffy. Yet he wasn't even that much older than me.
You're 34, right? Pretty recently turned?
7 months ago. I don't know if that counts as recently anymore.
That makes you the baby of our little team. Kale is 37. Anyway, here we are.
We stopped in front of a door with the number DO1 on it. Vaughn pushed a code into the console next to it.
You can change the password yourself, but for now we just put your birthday in.
She pushed the door open and shot me a grin.
Surprise!
Whoa! Okay, that's very impressive. So that was the bit of home, eh? Like, literally transported her an apartment. That's so cool. Okay, I'm impressed. What? The layout was the exact same as my old flat. All my things were in the same places and everything. It was weird. Vaughn squeezed past me and stepped inside, spinning around to face me.
What do you think?
I'm not sure. How exactly did you do this? Ari followed me inside, stopping just beside the door as I went further in to poke around and explore.
It seems they sent a team to retrieve all your belongings. Yup! Right after these two kidnappers grabbed you. I would prefer it if you both stopped calling me that. Apprehending an unregistered Esper is part of our job.
Vaughn just laughed and flopped onto the sofa, making herself at home. I still wasn't sure how I felt about it. Not Vaughn on the sofa, but everything else. There was a strange disconnect between where I knew I was and where it felt like I was. I can understand that, because it's like... I don't know if I'd want it to look like my apartment. Like, yes, it's familiar, but every time you leave, you're kind of expecting to see the environment you would expect to see from your old apartment. And it would be, like, kind of jarring, at least in the beginning, to see a hallway instead, like a different hallway and stuff. So, yeah, I get it. I don't know how I'd feel either. I trailed my fingers over one of my shelves. It's not just that my things are here. The floor plan and layout are the same as well.
We wanted you to be comfortable. This entire wing is set up in a modular fashion so we can literally move the walls around. It makes it pretty easy to rearrange things like this.
That does seem convenient.
Sometimes it's easier to rearrange walls than shuffle people around when they get married or move in together. When me and Mara got married, we already lived next door, so all we had to do was relocate a couple of walls and rearrange furniture.
Even the fixtures are the same, though. Some of the wall details? I couldn't imagine they had ripped some of the stuff out of my flat to bring it here.
We've got good attention to detail.
They both watched me as I poked through the kitchen. Even Trent's card was still sitting on the counter. Goodness gracious. Please tell me I have more food, though. They probably could have just thrown that out.
Don't like it?
Yeah, how do I feel? Yeah. I mean, both of these are kind of the same. It's not like, yeah, I don't know. I guess the top one's a little more polite. And that is kind of how I feel. I don't dislike it, but I don't know if I like it either. I don't dislike it exactly. It's just a little disconcerting is all. It's like being back home, but I'm not back home. I'm not quite sure how to feel about it. But I guess I can see the intent behind it. If I'm among my own things, I may be able to adapt faster without getting homesick. Or, I guess that's the theory, anyway.
Even so, you don't seem entirely pleased either.
Well, in a way, it just makes it all the more apparent I won't be going home.
So you're saying it backfired on us?
No, I'm not saying that. I just wasn't expecting it, that's all. I leaned on the counter and gave them both a tired smile. Maybe I'm a little burned out on surprises, that's all. I appreciate the sentiment behind it, though.
That said, your place is tiny. We can definitely move some walls and give you more space. The flat on the other side of this one is empty.
That's not necessary.
You don't even have a proper bed. This thing can't be all that comfortable.
I just laughed a little as she bounced on the sofa. You might be surprised.
I might be. Or I might just go home and sprawl gratefully on my massive real bed and hope you're nice and jealous over here. They did expand the flat to include a new bedroom. What? When did that happen? It was in the report, Vanessa.
There was a full report on my flat?
Ugh. You're going to learn one thing fast. In this place, there's a report on everything. Well, anyway, this is your new home. I hope you learn to love it eventually.
Technically, it's my old home, too. And I already did love it, so...
Oh, so you can be a little cheeky when you want, can't you?
I'd offer the two of you something to drink, but there's only water.
You can place an order for food items if you want, but many of us simply use the mess hall or lounge. But some of us do like to cook at home. Some of us are unaccustomed to cooking for ourselves. Then some of us need to learn. There's little time for it between training and missions.
I listened to the two of them bicker good-naturedly. I knew they were probably trying to distract me, make me laugh, or at least Vanessa was. But as I stared down at my hands resting on the familiar placemats, I just couldn't rid myself of the out-of-place feeling. Maybe it would have been better to come here as a child. I never would have had time to question my place or be sad about it. I must have sighed louder than I realized because Vaughn and Ari immediately stopped talking and looked my way.
You okay over there?
I have no choice but to be okay.
There's no shame in admitting this is overwhelming.
How long can I keep feeling overwhelmed? Nothing is going to change because I sigh a few times, or cry, or scream my head off over all this.
Maybe not, but you might feel better if you scream a little bit. I can go get Kale. He's good to scream at when you're having a bad day. Perhaps not. He does tend to yell back.
Vaughn got up and came to where I was standing, wrapping her arms around me. I squeezed my eyes shut and felt a lump grow in my throat as I leaned against her, grateful for the gesture.
It's okay to be sad about this for as long as you need. I wish I could say everything in your life will go back the way you want it to, but I can't. I can tell you it's going to be okay. It really is. Somehow.
This isn't what I planned. This isn't at all what I wanted to do with my life. I pulled away and ran my hands over my face, feeling bad they were having to hold my hand through all this.
What were you studying? Perhaps there is something here at Endgame you can do that is in a related field.
Really? I didn't think I'd get any say in what I'd be doing.
Given your rank, it's unlikely you could avoid fieldwork entirely, but that doesn't mean you won't have a say at all.
I don't like fighting. I don't like violence.
None of us likes those things, Morgan. Sometimes it just comes along with protecting people.
I know that. I know. I don't want to make any sort of decisions about the future right now. I think it's better to not think too far ahead.
I agree. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it's wiser to simply take each day as it comes. He's right.
She slid her fingers under my chin and made me look up at her before tucking my hair behind my ear. It was such a maternal gesture that it reminded me starkly of my mother. I had to swallow hard to keep from crying on the spot.
I know you don't want to be here, but sometimes it's not about where you want to be as much as where you're meant to be. Give us a chance. Sometimes the best things in life are the most unexpected ones.
I smiled slightly. I knew she was right. I'll try.
Good girl. And if you really need someone to yell at and don't want to risk Kale, I volunteer Ari. Vanessa.
I know this is a slight subject change, but what about my parents? How are they? And my brothers? I still haven't been able to contact them. It would help a lot if I could.
I don't know. I haven't kept track of that, but I'll look into it and at least get you an update.
I'd really appreciate it. She gave me another very gentle squeeze.
I'm sorry things turned out this way.
So am I. But in the end, you're right. If it feels like everything is broken right now, then my only choice is to rebuild it into something new.
That is the best way to look at it. That doesn't mean it's easy to see things that way. It's okay to be frustrated. And it's okay to want to yell at someone. Oh! There's also a training room with punching bags! That's a great stress relief. I'm sure she'll be spending plenty of time there going forward. She may wish to find another way to get out her stress. Thank you, Ari, for shooting that down. That was helpful.
Thank you both. For staying with me for a while.
Hey, don't mention it. And if you need anything, I'm just a few doors down. As am I. Not that you're good for anything but yelling at. I beg to differ. There are other ways to relieve stress, you know. Wink, wink.
I'm sorry. I apologize to everyone. I couldn't hold it back anymore. I was thinking about it during the whole stress relief thing, and I'm like, nope, it's coming out. It's coming out. I'm mature. Don't worry. It's fine. I just laughed as they started bickering again. Moving on.
We'll leave you alone for a little while if you want. I'm sure you want to get settled, check on your things, maybe rest a bit.
Thank you.
I'll stop back by around dinner and take you down to the lounge. I can introduce you to Mara and some of the others if you want.
I'd like that.
I can bring this guy with me too. Or I can just ditch him somewhere and come alone.
Well, it's his choice.
Then I too shall come by.
Nice. Vanessa gave me another hug before they started for the door. I followed behind out of habit and watched them let themselves out.
Don't forget you can call me if you need anything. You got your net access back, right?
Partially, yes. I still couldn't contact outside their private network, but I could contact people within the organization, and catch up on everything going on in the outside world the last few days. The latter would probably offer a distraction for a little while as well.
Then we'll see you later.
They stepped outside, and with that I was alone again. I let out a long, frustrated groan. Retreating back to the sofa, I flopped down, throwing an arm over my eyes. Too much. It was all definitely too much. I stared at the ceiling above me. I should look around a little first, especially to check out the bedroom they mentioned before. I was finally going to have my damn bath, even if it was days late. And after soaking for at least an hour, I couldn't say. Maybe I'd read. Maybe I'd go for a walk and see more of the building. But that was for later. For now, I was just going to go relax in a tub full of bubbles and try to forget everything for a while.